Ray Kroc, the founder of McDonald's, what he said a long time ago is, we're in the people business. We just happen to be selling hamburgers.
Yeah.
And I think we invest so much time and energy into our people development, and then giving them the autonomy to go run their individual restaurants the way that they want. And so what we've almost created is an incubator of just new ideas.
Well, welcome back to Case Studies. Here with my friend Brent Bohn, who we met. How did we meet? Was it Mitch Matthews?
Yeah, Mitch, and then I think we had another friend, that Dustin Van Gilder, who tried to connect us.
There's 2 or 3 friends that we kind of both had that tried to connect us, and I think a lot of it came down to you're kind of a serial entrepreneur. You've done it from early 20s, kind of all the way up, active in investing, like golf, like football. There was like a lot of similarities that they're like, hey, you guys should meet each other. And we met each other, and it's been interesting how over the last couple of years, you become like one of my dear, dear friends.
Yeah.
And I think about some of the experiences that we've had over the last couple of years, and I'm like, these are some like the highlights of my year. You know what I mean? Whether it's golf trips, whether it's gambling, whether it's kind of whatever it is,
right.
Morgan Wallen.
Yeah.
You know. And so I've been, from the day that I did this podcast, you were always one of the guys that I know your story. And it was one that I just think is a beautiful story, and kind of wanted to get you on here. And you live in Vegas, and just haven't been able to get kind of times together and stuff. So anyway, really excited to have you come out.
Yeah, glad to be here, and obviously feel the same way. Like, it feels like we kind of just hit the ground running of a friendship, and it's just been so much fun to get to know you, have a huge amount of respect for you and what you're doing, and in so many ways already in my life, like, you're a mentor, and you're teaching me things that I don't know, and I'm still learning. I think that's kind of the message of my story is, like, I'm a sponge and constantly learning.
No, but I think that's one of the
cool
things I admire about you. Like, you have a beautiful business. Like, you built an absolutely beautiful business, and we'll get into kind of the logistics and how you built it and your story. But I want to fast forward to the end. You invited me to come up and speak to your leadership team up in Midway.
Yeah.
And one, I was just honored because I was like, that's like such a sincere compliment to have me come speak to people that are really special. But the second, I got up there, and it's just like this family.
Mm-hmm.
And person by person by person. And I think the McDonald story kind of very much encompasses the American dream. Like, I don't know anybody that doesn't have an emotional connection with McDonald's. Like, anybody.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I'm from Logan, Utah, and I could give you 100 McDonald's stories growing up.
For sure.
Whether it's being a little kid and getting like a toy in my,
Happy Meal.
A Happy Meal, or
Yeah.
whether it's like being in high school and skipping class and going over there and grabbing, a Big Mac, or like us trying to game the Monopoly stuff. You know what I mean?
It's always something, right?
It's always something, but it's like that McDonald's story is just a part of the journey. And I was going through it with your team, and almost all of them have come up from like the very, like, being a teller and managing a store, and all of them are kind of living the American dream. All of them have kind of came where McDonald's has elevated their opportunities in life and in America, and I was just like, anyway, there's so many things about it that were inspiring to me. And then just the humility, like you said, you're a sponge. You and the people in your group taking notes, and they're working to improve and get better. And I love that culture that you built.
Well, it's great. And part of the reason I keep doing this, right, and remember when I love McDonald's and I love what I do, but more importantly, like, I have people that started as crew people for me, making minimum wage, that are now like supervisors that were in that meeting getting educated by you, that are running $25-30 million worth of business for me. And it's such a great story to me. They started at the bottom, and now they've worked their way up, and they're doing so many great things. And it's why I love doing what I do, providing opportunities for people kind of take that next step. And our company name is WBF Management. It stands for Watson Bohn Family Management. And the family piece of it was so strategic for us. It was so important for us. No matter how large we get, and as we continue to grow our empire, so to speak, of McDonald's restaurants, that family piece is just something that we bring back. We just bring back continually.
I love that word, because that was what I experienced. It was a family feel.
Absolutely.
It was everybody that was in that room, it wasn't a job to them. It was lifestyle. It was kind of very much tied into their identity. And you could also tell everybody was really proud to be there.
Yeah,
I mean, everybody had a lot of pride in what they were doing, what they were a part of.
They're the secret to our success, man. I mean, it's just like, as much as I try to provide overarching leadership and give a strategic vision and what have you, what gets done every day is in those restaurants, and it's done by that team. I mean, they're just so good. I mean, I'm proud to work with them, proud to be, the owner operator for those restaurants, and just have a team that's just out there just getting after it every single day, dealing with the BS that comes sometimes with running McDonald's restaurants, but they're awesome.
Yeah. So, let's talk a little bit about the business model.
Sure.
Like, I'm in food. I'm an investor in food and beverage. It's a tough business.
It is.
You know what I mean? Like, if you get a concept that works, it's really great. It's hard to get a concept that works. And I think McDonald's is the envy of everybody.
Right.
Because they just have this delivery system and this marketing and this platform that just works. And I think from the outside, but talk to me about like the business model of a McDonald's. If you're a franchise owner, and that's a tough world to crack.
It is.
Like there's a lot of people that would love to be a McDonald's franchise owner, and they just can't. They can't get into it. But if you own a McDonald's franchise, give me kind of the average store. What does the average store do from a top line? What does the average store kind of drop to the bottom? Yeah,
so average is probably about $3.5 million in revenue top line sales. Okay. And then, the cash flow on that, the EBITDA on that is going to be around $500,000 or so.
Okay.
And so, everyone's different, obviously, based upon the rent that McDonald's charges and how much money they want you to how much money you have to pay them.
Yep.
But they're obviously older restaurants have a lower rent as the business model is evolving, and McDonald's is charging a little higher rent over time. And so, that's pretty much all the money that we pay across my entire group of restaurants. We're about 15% between our rent and our what they call a service fee that goes straight to McDonald's.
Yep.
And then we obviously make our money off of the rest of that. So 15% of every dollar that comes in is going straight to McDonald's.
Going back to corporate.
Yeah. But they're a great franchisor. I mean, they do so many things and provide so much help and structure to us, and they help maintain standards around the world. I mean, part of the reason that the cheeseburger tastes the same whether you're in Israel or whether you're here in the United States is because of the fact that those standards are maintained. And it's one of the great things about the brand, the iconic fries and all of those things that just really, give a system to it. And that's why there's 35,000, 36,000 restaurants around the world.
So those are the average, but like, I think what's so impressive about yours is you guys are like on this end of the scale, kind of across the board. Like, you guys have exceptional performance, almost double that, like on an EBITDA margin and stuff like that. Talk to me about like, what is that secret sauce with your group? Like, how have you built something that you say there's thousands of these throughout the world, and our 50 or our 60 are going to be in the top 5%, the top 10%? Like, what are those standards from the family? How do you get there? And was it always like that, or is that something that's developed over time?
So my father-in-law is all like he it's how I got in the business, and we can talk a little bit more about that. But he's always been about excellence, right? And what for me is what the reason that I like McDonald's so much is I'm not a big idea guy. Come up with see a problem and go fix it. And McDonald's obviously has a structure, and what it does for me is what I've been able to do is just kind of take that and then find ways to maximize it and run it better than everyone else, and steal shamelessly from others what they do, and then just go do it better. I mean, that's kind of our motto and mantra. Like, we'll go see other stuff that other organizations are doing, or other McDonald's, or even other competitors of ours are doing, and we just take it and we just go do it way better and execute it.
I've heard you actually say that a couple of times. Like, I'm not an idea guy.
Yeah.
But when I think it's semantics, because I think when we're walking through that, like what you just described is ideas. It's a lot of ideas.
Sure.
Like, I think what I've admired about you just from like watching is how quickly you can identify, hey, that pattern, I really like that, and I'm going to make that my own. And instead of having to like reinvent the wheel, very rarely are you reinventing the wheel. You're just copying best practices and trying to do it better, build off of that excellence. And I think that's like a different level of ideas. You know, there's kind of the, I need to go create something from 0 to 1, and I have to have like, you know, the autonomy and the glory of, you know,
Right.
And then there's something else, which is just like, I'm going to take a system that works and make it better, and I'm going to kind of optimize the efficiency. And those management excellence principles, I think, is what I've noticed of, you know, that's what I've noticed excellence in your organization is you guys have excellent operational principles.
Yeah, and it goes back to a little bit what we were talking about earlier with the family aspect of it, right? I mean, you know, Ray Kroc, the founder of McDonald's, what he said a long time ago is we're in the people business. We just happen to be selling hamburgers.
Yeah.
And I think we invest so much time and energy into our people development, and then giving them the autonomy to go run their individual restaurants the way that they want. And so what we've almost created is an incubator of just new ideas and finding ways to maximize and go be a little bit faster, go be a little bit better here
But
and
it
there.
seems like a lot of that innovation comes from the field. It's like people
for sure.
that's running a restaurant or that are coming with those ideas, and there's got to be something with the culture where that's a safe place, where when that bubbles up, it's taking it and implementing it versus kind of a top-down culture.
Yeah, so, you know, what we do regularly is I read a book with my team, my entire team. It's called It's Your Ship. And it's a great book. It's about an admiral in the Navy, and he takes the worst ship in the Navy and he turns it into the best damn ship in the Navy.
Wow.
And we read that. I've read that book now 4 times with my team, and I challenge them to read it. They don't have to, but if they read it, then we go to dinner and we talk about it.
Yeah.
And we talk about the principles of the book. And what he did to turn that ship around is he basically just empowers them as owners of their department, whatever department of the ship they were running, whether it's the engineer and or it's the cook. You know, all those things are empowering. And that's what we try to, you know, so now in our organization, if I run in and every single one of my restaurants are doing the exact same thing, I view it that I'm failed. I want every restaurant manager to look at their individual restaurant as their ship.
Yeah.
And they're going to go and do what they need to do to go drive results within a framework, obviously, but, you know, to go do what you need to go drive results. And that really is what allows us to have this culture.
Yeah.
Where we're constantly looking at ways to be a little bit better and share those ideas, and it just makes it great.
Man, as I'm just hearing this, like, I remember I got asked to go teach the entrepreneurship program at BYU with Corbin Church.
Yeah.
And the idea of entrepreneurship, it was always kind of this, like, that person, you know, that's leading out in front of everybody else that just creates stuff out of thin air. I'm like, that's not me. Like, that's not my life. Most of my life has been somebody else created it.
Right.
And I can work within that system and innovate within the system to make it better. And that's been my version of entrepreneurship. You know, like when I was working at Vivint, they had guardrails, but we had quite a bit of latitude to be entrepreneurs within that program. And I think ultimately that's why most of us stayed as long as we stayed.
Right.
Was that autonomy and that ownership and that freedom. And I felt that from your group, where you could tell everybody kind of felt like they were the owners of that store. Like it was theirs.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? They had
and
their
that's
fingerprints on
like
it.
I said, it's a common phrase. Like, you could walk in and I'll have managers bring me problems, or I'll have a supervisor that'll bring me problems, and I just look at them and I'll just say, you know, it's your ship. You do what you want to do. You know, tell me what you want to do, and it really helps feel like when the success comes, you know, they feel like they're a part of that success. But also when there's issues and there's problems, they feel like, hey, I got to go fix that. And so it doesn't bog us down from, as we're trying to run a large organization, it doesn't bog us down because we're not having to deal with mundane problems all the time because we've got people that have ownership that see a problem and they go and address it and they go
Yep.
deal with it the best way they can. And it's just, it helps to just, and it really starts to snowball and create a situation where you get a lot of great ideas and a lot of great people that are just moving at a very, very high level. And so I think that's kind of what separates us and what makes us a little bit different. I mean, the average McDonald's restaurant organization in the system right now in the United States is like 10 restaurants. And we're going to push 60 in the next month or two. And so there's a reason why. It's because of the things that we do.
But it's kind of an honor, right? Like
Absolutely.
when you're allowed, you have to get permission from McDonald's to get more restaurants.
Correct.
And the reason that they're kind of feeding you the rock is that you've been a good steward over the ones you already have. Absolutely. You know what I mean? They're not sending you more restaurants if you're running the current ones at suboptimal or even average levels. They want those restaurants to perform.
You got to be excellent, right? And that's what we're about. I mean, we're trying to find ways to just maximize what we do, and I think we're our own toughest critic. If we're waiting for McDonald's to tell us whether or not we're doing a great job, we're going to fail. I mean, we have to constantly be looking internally, and that's what that meeting was about that you came and spoke at is, how do we take a great year last year and let's go make it even better next year.
Level up.
And we got to level up, and we're constantly looking at that and changing our goals, modifying how we approach it. And I think that that's one of the things that, along with other things, but that's one of the things that really separates us.
So great. So I'm going to switch gears.
Yeah.
I want to go back to the beginning because I think this is important.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to me about kind of growing up. So growing up, you grew up in Provo, went to Timpview.
Yeah, well, originally I was born in Arkansas. I lived in Little Rock, Arkansas for a long time, and then moved out here to Provo when I was like 14, and went to Timpview, go T-Birds, and just loved my experience here, and worked for my dad. My dad was in construction, and I hated construction, absolutely hated it. But it taught me how to work hard, number one. And number two, it probably paid more than I could go make anywhere else. And so I kept doing it. Yeah. But I absolutely hated it. I remember like early in my life, I went to work with my dad. I was like 8 or 9 years old, and he was painting the church building down in Arkansas. And he had me sanding the walls and just getting them all prepped up for him to paint. And I rode home from work that day with him, and I said, "Dad, I'm going to college. I don't want to do this." And he's like, "Good, mission accomplished." Yeah. So it was just, but it taught me how to work hard, and that never been afraid to do that. And
I remember going on my mission, and I came back, and one of my football coaches was a plumber.
Wow.
And he had me I went with him one day, and was digging like trenches for the plumbing, and by the end of it, I was like, I'm never doing that ever again. Yeah. Like it was so hard. Like the physical labor was so hard. And that was, so like when you're describing that, I'm having flashbacks of like this realization to like, man, I need to go find something that's aligned with my skill set because this isn't. Yeah, I'm not even that good at digging holes.
I was actually good at the work, and I did a decent job at it, and can actually do some of that stuff. But I try not to act like I can because I don't want my honey-do list to get too big, And I just tried. I mean, I hated the work. Like I just did not like it.
Didn't love it.
I did not love it at all. But I look back on it, and it was just like the fact that I can go and fix stuff and be a problem solver with those kind of things. And I appreciate so much my dad giving me those skills. But I just knew it was just not for me. And I got to watch him try to run a business and there was no consistency to it. No matter how great of job he did, tomorrow he could not have work, like he could, hey, no one wants their house painted or nobody needs their fence built or whatever it was. And so I'm just like, golly, that inconsistency gave me anxiety and like I couldn't deal with it. So it was interesting to watch him struggle to be a business owner. And I learned a lot. Like I said, I was a sponge and just watched that and knew that just wasn't the path for me. But kept doing it to make some money in the meantime.
Yeah. You did that.
Yeah.
Where'd you go from there?
So I, served a mission, went to Brazil, served a mission, worked really, really hard down there. Loved that. Loved being a missionary. And then, came back and actually started going to school. Went to UVSC at the time, UVU, got my associate's degree. And then I transferred to BYU. And while I was at BYU, kind of hopped around different majors. And for me, I knew I wanted to make money, but because of like lack of education, lack of understanding, and probably some mentorship, I always equated like doctors and those kind of people to people that made money.
Yeah.
And so I was pre-med.
Yeah.
Had no ambition to be in medicine.
You just want to make
but I
money.
wanted to make money.
Yeah.
I knew I wanted to do that. And so as I started to get a little exposure to, one of my best friend growing up was McKay Bateman, and his dad was Merrill Bateman, the president of BYU. And just spend a little time with him. We didn't get a lot of time with him because he was so busy, but just talking to him every once in a while about business and mentorship and realize there's other ways to make money. There's other ways to do that. And so that kind of got me intrigued. And then I got a job doing what I thought I wanted to do the rest of my life, and I dropped out of college.
Yeah.
And I left because college wasn't fulfilling for me. It wasn't I felt really rudderless because I felt like I was put into a path that without getting the result that I was looking for.
Yep.
And so left that, went and moved to Southern California for a short time doing this job that I thought I wanted to do the rest of my life. And then ultimately that led me to South Florida and lived down there and met my wife.
And she lived down there?
Yeah, she lived down there. She was actually home for the summer from BYU, Idaho. She was home for the summer. We started dating and got married relatively quickly. And then and I'm like, that's when my exposure to McDonald's came.
Yeah.
And so...
and that was her dad, right?
Yeah, so my father-in-law, we got married, and then as a way to get to know my father-in-law, I would go with him on the weekends and play golf. But before we'd play golf, he's like, hey, I'm going to go shop a couple of restaurants. And so we'd go through the drive-through of his restaurants, and then we'd go inside. And he had this little paper that I would fill out. Did they smile? How fast was it? Did the food taste good?
Wow.
Is it clean? And I'd fill out this paper. And then he'd go in and he'd recap this with the manager, say, hey, you got these issues, this is what you got to do better, right? And we just would do that. And and that's how my exposure to McDonald's came around. And I was just like, I'd start to talk to him, and I'm like, hey, like, they're making these mistakes. It can't be that hard. And he's like, no, it's harder than you think. He's like, but there are ways you can avoid those kind of mistakes and stuff. And then just over time, like we did this for over a course of a few months, where I'd go play golf with him, and that was my exposure to it. And then I found out the money you could make at McDonald's, and I'm like, oh, I want to go do this.
Yeah.
And I was ready to go. And
so talk to me about that, because I think this is reflective on your character and also your drive. So you had a good job at this time.
Yeah, I had a great job. I was working with a cousin of mine. We had this company. I owned a small portion of this company with him, and we were doing like internet web hosting seminars all around the country.
Yeah.
And it was a great gig. I mean, I was honestly like actually working 20 to 25 hours a week.
So you're not grinding.
We're playing golf. We have a server in a closet that's hosting websites that's paying us money. I mean, it was back when you had to pay to host websites, this whole deal, right? And I was making good money. Yeah. But I saw this McDonald's opportunity, and I saw the money you could make in it, and I wanted to go do it. Yeah. And I said, hey, I'm going to go do this. And so I talked to my father-in-law, and his first response was no. He's like, there's easier ways to make a living. And I'm like, no, I really, really want to go do this. And so I was working for him, talked to my wife as well, and she's just like, are you sure? I know how hard my dad works. Like, are you sure you want to do this? And I'm like, yeah. And so I would go and I'd work my other job, and then for like a couple of weeks, I would go and work shifts at night. And so I'm in there like with the regular, and it's at nighttime, so I'm with the 16-year-old kids. They're teaching me about how to make fries, how to make the meat, and do big burgers and all this stuff. And I'm working these, like, I'd work all day and then go do these shifts. And I did that for like 2 weeks, and I probably worked 2 or 3 shifts a week. But that was my exposure to it. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, I want to go do this. And so I went to my father-in-law, told him how much money I was making, and he's like, well, this is what I pay, which was significantly less. And
so give like numbers, because I think it matters. I think it matters. Like,
so I was probably making about 110, 120 grand a year. Yeah. And I went to my father-in-law, and I'm like, hey, I'm ready to go. I'm going to come do this. And he's like, okay, I pay, starting restaurant managers like 50 grand a year. And I'm like, well, I make 120. And he's like, well, I pay 50. And so I was like, whoa. So I had to go back and kind of recalibrate. I went home, and I remember I talked to my wife, and I'm like, hey, like, we're going to take a huge pay cut here. Yeah. You sure you want to do this? And she's like, I support you, whatever you want to do. And I'm like, all right. And so, I went into it knowing that I had to hit the bonus numbers, knowing I had to be great at it, because I couldn't afford to live it that way for very long. Like, I've got to go figure this out. Probably racked up more credit card debt than I should have, because I was trying to maintain a lifestyle.
I think about your father-in-law. Yeah. Like, what a hero.
Yeah.
For him not to just give it to you.
He's told me, he said, no one's ever going to claim nepotism. Like, no one's going to say that you're here because you're my son-in-law.
Yeah.
And, it was interesting because once I started at McDonald's, I struggled for a very short time. I remember, because of circumstances, I ended up running a restaurant basically day one. Like, I'm the restaurant manager day one. And I have no idea what the hell I'm doing. Like, no idea. And I'm in there, and I'm supposed to have this support from other people. And they gave me a great assistant manager that had ran a restaurant before, but didn't quite have the leadership.
Yeah.
And I had no idea what I'm doing. Like, and I remember, like, one time, like, getting upset because the store wasn't running well, and I knew it wasn't running well, but I had no idea how to fix it.
Yeah.
And I remember, like, yelling at these poor 16, 17-year-old kids, and I'm just like, I don't know what the heck's going on, but when I figure it out, I'm going to light you up. But within 5-6 months, I figured it out. Like, and actually, my first complete year as a restaurant manager, I won an Outstanding Store Manager Award, which is the top 10% of restaurant managers in the country.
Yeah.
And this was when I spent 6 months of it not even knowing what I was doing. And, I really did a good job, and I showed leadership, and I knew how to lead people. I just had to learn the McDonald's system. And that was where I really struggled. And so, in McDonald's, there's kind of like a succession. So you start as a restaurant manager, and then you become a supervisor. And after I'd been a restaurant manager about a year, almost a year and a half, I was ready to become a supervisor.
Yeah.
And my father-in-law had communicated it to the entire organization, had told everybody, Brent's going to be our next supervisor. The lady who ran his company for him was the director of operations. She had done it. I'd been over to the restaurants that I was going to take over as the supervisor, met with them, set goals with them, the whole deal. And I was having this training class at my restaurant where all the restaurant managers in all of Palm Beach County in Florida were coming to my restaurant to get trained on this new initiative with McDonald's, because I ran a really good restaurant. And to get ready for this visit, I stayed up all night, and I was, cleaning the restaurant. And it looked great. I was there till 4 a.m. at this restaurant, getting it looking good. And my father-in-law comes in the next day. He walks in, and he's like, man, Brent, the store looks great. He's like, it looks really, really good. Like, you can film a commercial in this thing right now. And I'm like, thanks. He's like, man, I was here till 4 a.m. and I'm exhausted, but we got it ready. We'll be ready to rock and roll today. Right then, he calls over the director of operations. Her name was Carol. He calls her over, and he says, Carol, right in front of me, he's like, hey, we're not going to make Brent our next supervisor. And he's like, a supervisor for me wouldn't have to stay up all night to get their store clean. It would have already been clean. And I was crushed. And I was just like, you got to be kidding me. I was so embarrassed. Here I was working all night to get this store ready to look as good as I could. And he crushed my progression right there. My father-in-law was the one that stopped it. And I was pissed, man. Like, I went home that night exhausted, went through the training, went home that night exhausted. We were laying in the bed with my wife, and I said, that's it, I'm quitting. I'm throwing the keys at him tomorrow. Like, I can't believe your dad would do this to me. I can't believe it. And just before I was about to go to sleep, because my mind was going 100 miles an hour, I just said, you know what? F him, I'll show him. And I said, I'll go down. I'll go fix it. And it was probably one of the greatest lessons in my history of my operating career, because it taught me that you have to do the right things because they're the right things to do, not because you're trying to put on a show.
So good.
And it was awesome for me, and it's really been a catalyst for me in the way that I approach my business. Is we're going to do the right things and find a way to make it work and make a lot of money doing it.
Yeah.
But because they're the right things to do.
Yeah.
And so about 3 or 4 months later, I ended up getting promoted and became a supervisor. And then I was a supervisor for a very short time. And then I actually took over the organization and became the director of operations and ran that. And then went through my approval process with McDonald's and got approved. But that moment, number one, the whole organization knew that he wasn't going to give it to me. And number two, I knew that, more importantly, I knew that I wasn't given anything, that I earned everything in this business. And so it's really allowed me to lead from more of a position of strength, because I knew that, you know what, I'm here because I deserve to be here.
So I had such, like, I'm sitting here listening to this, and I think my path, and this could be why I think we've connected so much. Like, I went to UVU, dropped out of UVU.
Yeah.
Started selling door to door. Like I started as a sales rep in an office in Des Moines, Iowa, and working my way up. And I'd done it for about 3 years and had like a level of success where I was kind of a star at this small company. And the company goes out of business, and there was 2 options to go work. One of the options was a company that they basically made me feel more special. They said, you can be a regional manager day one. You don't need to go back to the bottom.
Right.
We'll give you this salary. You have an office. You don't need to do that work. You don't need to go knock doors. You don't need to manage. And it was kind of option A. And then I had Todd and Alex, who were option B, that I really admired these guys. And in my heart of hearts, I wanted to go work at Vivint. I wanted to go work at Apex. And they said, you need to start as a sales manager. Not just a sales manager. You can't manage unless you go do 200 preseason with your team and you go do 50 personally.
Wow.
So one side's telling me, hey, you can be the regional manager. You've already checked that box. And the other one, and I still remember, it was so sincere. It was so sincere. And I know these guys wanted me really bad, but they weren't willing to compromise their standards. And Todd, I remember he just said it to me. He said, you're never going to have credibility in the organization if you haven't done the exact work that you're telling people to go do. And when I'm listening to your story, I can just hear the power that you have in these meetings because you've managed a store. And even like staying up till 4 a.m. and doing it yourself, it's not that you're cheating, because like you're trying to be excellent.
Right.
But the lesson was, you'll never lead at the level you need to lead if you have to do that yourself.
Exactly.
You need to go grow as a leader, and you need to be able to inspire your team to raise to that standard. And I'm thinking about your father-in-law. I'm like, what an exceptional leader for him to be able to have, because me and you have kids. It's way easier to give your kids what they want.
Absolutely.
You want to. Like you don't want them to suffer. You don't want them to hurt. I'm sure he didn't want to go home and have you pissed off at him that night. But it was worth teaching that lesson, and he gave you everything. Like, you got the whole organization not too long after, but it was like there was this test that you had to pass. Anyway, like the story's firing me up. I'm just listening to that going, like, it's no wonder that you're having the success that you're having now, because you didn't skip steps on the front end. And I think that's the entrepreneurial lesson that's like, it gets missed so much. People want to just jump to the front of the line,
right,
without doing the work. You know what I mean?
I mean, there's just something said, there's just doing it right. You're going to learn the right systems. You're going to learn how to lead people the right way. And I'm just so thankful for it. Wasn't thankful for it at the time,
of course.
but so thankful for it now. And more importantly, like it's allowed me to lead our organization to new heights and to new things. He told me recently, he's like, Brent, he's like, you've taken our organization places I never could have got us there. And he's so humble. I mean, like, super confident. Like, I have so much respect for him from a business standpoint. But he's also like very humble to realize, there's other people that can do better things. And I've tried to emulate that. Like, the lady that runs my company now, her name's Amma, and she's the best in the business. And you've met her, but
she's exceptional.
She's incredible. But I think that I know, like, I was running the business and I got out of the way and promoted her to running it because I knew she'd run it way better than I was running it. And I think that, but I never would have done that. I probably would have been very egotistical and probably like tried to protect, job security wise, protect my place if I didn't have enough confidence to say, you know what, I know what I'm good at. I know what I can do. Let me get out of the way and go let her take us to new heights.
Yeah.
And she's done that. I mean, she's amazing in so many ways. And I'm just, that lesson, it trickles down. I mean, I think about, I listen to a lot of your podcasts and obviously we've had a lot of discussions, but what Todd taught you and what Alex taught you has trickled down now. And I mean, the impact that they made, like, it may have just been a handful of people they were impacting personally, but then what you've been able to do on others, I mean, it just permeates.
I think that's like the spiritual part of business for me.
Oh, for sure.
Like the touching people's lives. I had this experience yesterday. We had this lesson this morning with our kids. We'll do like a little morning lesson. Mm-hmm. And it was on kindness. And we talk a lot about, hey, what are the Baughs known for? What do we want to be known for? And it's like, we want to be known for being kind. So we're going through like, hey, what are actually like the physical benefits of being kind? And like ChatGPT and comes up with like these really beautiful explanations of like the physical stuff that happens to your body.
Right.
From the serotonin and oxytocin and different like stuff that's released when we serve people. And that's why we feel good. That's why, and I was talking to to our kids, and I thought about, knocking doors. And I thought about like these kids came to my house last night. Me and you were playing Silverleaf yesterday, which you shot 79 with 5 birdies, which is insane. Like you absolutely.
I got lucky.
Yeah, there's a lot of luck. But we played Silverleaf in the morning, but we kind of cut it off early because we were trying to get home to be with my kids before they go to bed. And so I'm getting home, and I see this car park in my neighborhood. And these 2 kids get out. They look like missionaries, except with clipboards. I know they're selling something. I'm like, oh, shoot. Like, they're going to come to my house, and I've got like 45 minutes with my kids. I just don't want to talk to them. And so they're kind of knocking on my door. I was ignoring them in the other room. And then I'm having like this like memory of me being that guy.
Yeah. And
also managing 100,000 kids, or over 15 years. And I'm like, that's just bad karma to not. So I go see these kids, and the sales pitch is terrible. Like, it is a terrible delivery. And he's training somebody. And the kid he's training, like, I'm like, oh man, you are really fresh. Like, looks like he's straight out of high school. And he's selling me solar. We don't need solar. And so anyway, I'm like, hey, not going to buy anything, but come in, grab a drink. Have him go grab a drink out of my fridge. And then again, I'm rushing out the door. I got to go pick up my daughter from dance class. And then I just have this thought, and I'm like, run in, grab a couple $100, driving down the road, find these kids, give each of them $100. And I just said, hey, like, just wanted to honor you guys for, being 7:30 at night on a weekday and just out hustling. And just want to tell you guys, like, keep going, and it'll serve you so well. And I go driving off, and it was just like this beautiful experience. It was just like this, like, beautiful spiritual experience of just kind of saying, like, man, we've all been that person. We've all been that person that you're the manager of McDonald's, and you're like mad at the 16-year-old because the 16-year-old doesn't know how to do it better than you. And you're kind of mad at yourself.
Right.
Because you don't know how to do it. And, starting really bad and then going from bad to better to pretty good to excellent. And there's just a maturity continuum that has to take place, and you just can't skip steps. And so when you see people in that process, like, I think that's why management is the most noble profession. And I think that's why we get so much fulfillment out of our profession, is that you're touching people's lives like that. People can work for a lot of McDonald's programs, but when they work for yours, it's a different experience. They have a different career path. They've got a different life experience. I guarantee 99% of your peers don't have family in their name and don't have people reading books and all the programs that you do to go develop these, this family of yours.
Yeah. I mean, I think that management for me is just, it's just a real opportunity to just bless people's lives. Because I always tell my people, like, when they get frustrated with their employees, like, nobody wakes up and wants to do a bad job.
Yeah.
You know, and it's our job to just go find a way to motivate them. You know, Dwight Eisenhower said, like, leadership is getting other people to do what you want done because they want to do it.
Yeah.
And I think that, you know, just spending time with people is and investing energy in them and helping them accomplish way more than they ever thought they could is just why I love doing what I do. You know, the check's nice, don't get me wrong. Like, I love, you know, but I love blessing people, and like, I love being a part of their success. And, you know, to see people that are making at 25, 30 years old for me, making way more money than their parents ever made, and like setting the new standard for their families is just so cool.
I could see the pride,
just fun.
Like, I could see the pride. You had these young, you know, married people, and you had kind of, you know, middle-aged people that, like, they'd gone from like being a working the counter to like running stores.
Yeah.
And you could just see the pride. Like, you could see the pride that, like, I'm doing something and I'm rising above my station. And I just think it's beautiful. So
and I think that's why, Casey, like, I have to continue to grow, right? Is because these people, I mean, I see my employees and the leadership of my company, they work so hard.
Yeah.
That my responsibility is to continue to provide opportunities for them. You know, like, there, in a lot of ways, it'd be great to just kind of maybe stop and just say, you know, let's just go run these 59, 60 restaurants we have, and let's run them really, really well.
Yeah.
And just milk the cash out of them. But man, like, I got someone who's working hard and they want to be the next supervisor. I have somebody who wants to be the next director of operations. I owe it to them to continue to grow, to provide those opportunities.
Yeah.
I don't promote anybody in my organization. People promote themselves. I tell that to my people all the time.
Yeah.
My job is to make sure the opportunity's there. And that's what we try to do, is just really create that kind of opportunity, and because people can accomplish way more than they think they can when they're pushed, you know.
Talk to me about how that's translated into raising kids. So I've met your kids, and it feels like there's a similar culture within your family. Kind of that empowering, that believing in them, making them go earn it.
Well, I think, you know, part of that comes back to you know, their mother, right? I mean, she is still, but she's just so good about making them self-sufficient. Like, I mean, early on, I mean, I remember we were brand new parents, and my kids, like, in my oldest daughter, Brooklyn, is in kindergarten, and she's getting up, making her own breakfast, making her own lunch for school. And as my wife was telling other parents that this is what she's doing, they're like, wait, I have a 6th grader and I make their lunch still. It's just like, no, you know, I mean, they just became self-sufficient. Like, they're doing their own thing. And it starts that way, you know, like, and I do a lot for my kids, but also, like, they've seen me work, and they see what is involved, and then what I make them do. Like, you know, I just try to empower them to make their own decisions, you know, and I think that's what unconditional love comes back to, is not trying to put your kids into a box and say, hey, this is how life is going to be successful for you, but just finding ways to just support them and wherever they're at, you know. They're going to get there. It's just how they get there. And while that can be stressful as a parent, I mean, I got 2 that are adults now, and watching them make adult decisions is like, you know, it's cringy, but also, like, it's their way, it's their path. And I just want them to know that, you know, my motto in life is this: when it comes to being a parent, the one thing I'm convinced of is that life's going to smack my kids in the face at some point. And I don't want them to say, oh shit, what's my dad going to think? I want them to say, oh shit, I need to call my dad.
Oh my gosh, how beautiful is that?
And that's how I try to live my life, because I want them to know that I'm there for them. That doesn't mean we're not going to talk about the decision. It doesn't mean that we're not going to, you know, say, hey, here's the ramifications of that or what have you. But I just want them to know that dad's there, mom's there for them. Don't be afraid of us.
I do this exercise every morning where I'll meditate, and then I'll go through these questions, and it kind of it's a form of, you know, helping me get my mind right for the day.
Yeah.
And one of the questions I'll go through is, who am I? And it really focusing on identity. And a lot of it's aspirational. It's who do I want to be, like at my best. And I remember hearing this phrase from Tony Robbins that I've added into that. And what you were describing right there captures it, which is a word that he describes himself is warm father. That he wants to be a warm father. And I think about, and so I've added that to like, who am I? And I think about the response for my kids when they screw up or when they're, and I want that response to be warm. I want that to be with my heart, that they feel loved, that they feel safe. And I think when I'm not at my best, it's not that. I get snappy or I get, short or whatever. And it's this reminder that no, like, it's what you're describing is something gets bad and them not thinking like, oh no, what's dad going to do?
Yeah.
But if like the response was, I need to call my dad, like he'll help me fix it, or he'll be there for me. And I'm like, that's really beautiful if you can have that. And that takes work for a lot of years before that moment. You know what I mean?
When my son was 16, he made a questionable decision. And he was with a buddy of his, and his buddy brought him home. And they called me before, and he's like, hey, Dad, I made a bad decision. I'm on my way home. And my friend's bringing me. And I remember he walked in, and I just absolutely lost it on him. Like, I never got physical with my kids, but I got a little pushy with them. Like, I lost it. I just lost it. Because was swearing at him, just like, you're such an idiot, And I remember afterwards just like how I felt. And it just crushed me because it was exactly opposite of who I said I was.
Yeah.
And who I wanted to be for my kids. Like,
yeah.
And I was embarrassed that my son had made this decision, right? And I remember apologizing to him, not only that day, but multiple times since, for that moment. And I remind him of that moment almost as a litmus test to, hey, am I doing a better job? Yeah. And it's almost to the point where he's like, okay, Dad, yeah, I get that you're sorry about that. That was like 4 years ago, Yeah. But I just want him to know like that that's not the dad that I want to be. And I've made a concentrated effort to not be that person because that was not productive.
But I think the humility to say you're sorry is really hard. Like, I think the pride side of us would say I'm the adult or I'm right.
Right.
And I think like for me, I'm always so disarmed by people that have the humility to just apologize. And your heart, like the tension immediately disappears. Like I've had a couple of these scenarios where I watch my wife, who's just at her wit's end, get short with one of our kids. Like completely justified. Yeah. They're just being like absolute problems. And I'll see her in the moment stop. Then I'll see her go in, like get down on her knees, look him in the eye. And she just said, I'm so sorry. Will you forgive me? And I see that. I'm just like, and you take this kid that's just so mad or crying, and all of a sudden all that goes down.
Yeah.
And, even with me and my wife, there's been so many times where we're, at each other's necks or whatever it is. And if it's me that takes the lead or her, one of us just apologizes. Like there's this, I always think about this ancient Chinese proverb that says, if you're going to bow, bow low. And it's like, if you're going to apologize, really apologize, own it. Don't do a halfway. Like if you're going to own it. And I think about that. And like when I just say, I'm so sorry, I'm really tired, completely out of line, will you forgive me? It's like it just disappears and it fixes so much faster than me being prideful for 3 days. You know what I mean?
Well, and I think that, no matter how much success we have in business or even in other responsibilities and things like that, like at the end of the day, like it's all about, to me, it's about being a good dad, a good father, like, and a good husband or whatever. And I just want to, like, that's where the legacy is going to be, and a great friend. I mean, those are the things that are like, that's where your legacy is going to be. You know, no one's going to care my dad told me as a young kid, I mean, I grew up pretty poor and just seemed like we were constantly struggling back and forth. But my dad always told me as a kid, he's like, son, you never seen a hearse pulling a U-Haul. And it's true. Like all this stuff that we do, like, you never seen someone rolling into the cemetery with all their stuff behind them, and it's true. And so like how you leave people and how you impact them is just like so important. And as I look back on my life, like I just want to be a great dad.
Yeah.
Like I just want my kids to, I just want my kids to know that like they mean the world to me, and like everything that they do, whether good or bad, I'm proud of them because like they're awesome. They're awesome kids. And so I just love being a dad. I love spending time with them. And I think adult kids, like I said, I have two now, is probably like one of the greatest things because you start to move from a parent-child relationship into friends.
Yeah.
And not, you're always going to be their parent, but you start to move into a friendly relationship, and it's just so fun.
It's beautiful.
And so cool.
No, it's kind of the circle of life. And I think me and you were getting to that spot where we're getting into like the mid part of it. It's just so crazy. I still feel like I'm like the 20-year-old, the 16-year-old. You go to the high school football game.
Yeah.
Like that feels like yesterday. Like that feels,
I could still do it.
That feels like I'm there. Yeah. So this is one me and you have talked to a lot, but I've been interested to kind of ask you where you're at with this. Talk to me about faith.
Man.
And talk to me about how that fits in the whole picture of being a dad, being a business owner. And I know it's evolved over time with you, but like, how does that fit?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, faith is something that for me that I'm constantly learning and learning how to be better. And I knew that you would probably ask this question. And I think back, the best way that I can describe faith is for me is there's a story in the Bible. It's in Luke, I think, chapter 5. It's also in Mark chapter 2, where there's the guy who's sick, right? And he's in the bed, and they go, and his friends lift him up on the bed, and they go to take him to Jesus to have Jesus heal him. And they show up, and the building's so full that they can't get in. So they go up on top of the building, they cut a hole in the roof, and they lower their friend down in front of Jesus. And Jesus is like, wow. And he heals him, right? Because of the faith of both him and also his friends. And I think for me, like, that's how I define my faith, is by service.
Yeah.
And two things I look at that. Number one, I want to be that kind of friend.
Yeah.
A friend that when my friends have issues, I'm going to go and cut a hole in a roof and I'm going to lower them down so they can fix their problem. And number two, I want to surround myself with those kind of people that if something happens to me, that they're willing to do the same thing.
Yeah.
And that's for me is like the epitome of faith. Like you talked about, business is some of your most spiritual experiences. And throughout my life, like just serving other people is when I feel closest to God.
Yeah.
And probably, I don't sit in church and feel like, oh man, that was awesome. Or I don't really read the scriptures and like, what an powerful passage of scripture for me.
Yeah.
But serving people and like just doing, that's why I loved being a missionary when I served a mission, is because like you're just out. That's the closest you get to doing Christ's ministries. Like you're out there just serving people. It's not about you. You're not worried about anything out there other than, man, how can I help so-and-so decide to be baptized, or how can I help so-and-so feel better in their life? Like, it's not about you.
Yeah.
And I just think that that's how I try to, that's where faith comes from me is how I feel closest to God, is like just serving others and finding ways to do that.
Anybody who knows you feels it.
Yeah.
And I know, like, your wife and my wife are very similar. Like, my wife is the structure of church lights her up, every piece of it. And it doesn't light me up the same way. But she lights me up, and so I, like, if it's important to her, I try to make it as important to me.
Yeah, I probably went through a period of time where, like, positions in church were something that I almost not aspired to, but like, man, I wonder if like, oh, they're going to make a new bishop. I wonder if that could be me, or hey, there's a new elders quorum president coming. I wonder, man, that could be, and I probably like want, sought after that. But then I just realized, number one, that's a lot of work, and anyone that wants that deserves it. And then number two, it's not, you can still be fulfilled no matter what, and I just try to just go be a light in people's life.
Yeah.
And, my last couple of years have been a little tumultuous in my personal life with that kind of stuff, and a lot of mental health things that I've dealt with, but it's helped me to recognize, number one, that in other people, and to be a real light to other people.
Yeah.
And to just realize that, man, we all got stuff we're dealing with.
But talk to me about that, because talk to me about the mental health struggles, because I think this is one that people don't talk about. I think more people are suffering in silence than they're willing to admit, and I think it takes like a lot of bravery to just say like, "Hey, I'm struggling a little bit."
Yeah,
I mean,
I've got, I've had some crazy experiences where, where I've even thought about taking my own life. And it's been, I don't know whether we want to go into that, but like, it just, I realized that no matter how much accomplishment you have, like you have to love you.
Yeah.
And I think like, I just see now so many of my friends who I've put on a pedestal for years, or even people that I don't know well that I've put on a pedestal, and they just have like life crashing moments. And I probably used to just really judge them a lot for that. And now I try to just find such a space to love them, because I realize that the reason that they're there is because they don't love themselves enough.
Yeah.
Most issues that people have, either with other people or with their own in their own lives, is just because they don't love themselves enough.
So profound.
And I'm constantly trying to find ways to love myself more, and to help other people realize, number one, that I love them.
Yeah.
And help them to find ways to love themselves, because you're great. No matter where you're at in life, like, you're great.
Yeah.
You're doing good stuff. You might have different things you need to work on. We all do. I don't think we ever arrive in this race.
So talk to me about what you've done, because you have habits and rituals that you've kind of, me and you have talked, and there's kind of been, a lot of high times. Mm-hmm. And specifically probably when things were the busiest, like where you actually don't even have time to think about anything else. You're just freaking grinding. And then there's low times where it dips really low. But it feels like over the last couple of years, you've found habits and rituals and things that get you back to center quicker.
Yeah.
Like what type of stuff have you implemented that you found like allows you to be more of the captain of your ship and to manage your emotions better and manage mental health?
Well, number one, I think that you have to realize it's okay to not be okay.
Just to be down.
Yeah. I mean, there's, but what I think you have to learn, and what I've tried to learn, is whether that's through breathing techniques or through meditation, or just through activity, try to be more active, is ways to deal with it. Because no matter how great we are, we're going to have moments when we're down. Yeah. And it's okay. It doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. It doesn't mean that, you have really deep, dark issues. It's okay to not be okay. Yeah. And you see a lot more and more people stepping out and talking about that. Yeah. And I just try to do the same thing. Number one. And then number two, like, you have to be a little selfish sometimes. We want to, you and I think, are very aligned with this. We want to bless other people so much, and we don't want to miss an opportunity to do that we probably put off some of our own wants and needs. Yeah. And that can be okay. But it also can it can snowball and lead to some bad things. So every once in a while, like, it's okay to just take care of yourself and just be like, hey, you know what? I'm not going to do this because I need space today.
I think about the principle of sharpening the saw.
Right.
And just how important it is as a principle to say, like, I am going to allocate real time for myself to sharpen the saw. And it could be your body, it could be your mind, it could be, your faith. But say, this is my time. Like, even something as simple as, for me, this habit of putting my phone down when I get home and just knowing that the world's not going to end and that I can not answer my phone for 3 hours and be with my family or be with my wife, or you know what I mean? And I think having those boundaries has helped me, have better mental health, to not be, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Because you get addicted to solving problems. You really do.
You do, and what's interesting is, so I'm in this men's help group, right? And we all, there's like 5 of us, 6 of us that meet together. They're all relatively accomplished people, and so it's good for me. And we talk about our problems and our issues, and at the end every day, we also set goals and what we're going to accomplish. And one of the guys in the group said to me, he's like, I find myself just wasting idle time so much. He's like, I take my phone into the bathroom with me, and I'll like go to spend some time in the bathroom. Next thing you know, I've been sitting there for 30 minutes scrolling through Instagram or something like that. And she's like, so my goal over the next 2 weeks is to eliminate that.
Yeah.
And I sat there and I thought, and I said, you know what? I have the same problem. And so I'm going to do the exact same thing.
Yeah.
And so we challenged each other, and we text each other a couple times over the next 2 weeks. But like, what was crazy is when I first started that process of like not taking my phone into the bathroom with me, I like felt completely incomplete. Like, I can't go have a bowel movement because I have to have my phone with me in order to do this, right? And so, and then like, I know this is like crazy. We're on the podcast talking about crapping, but it's just like, that's what it was. And so I started leaving my phone like across the room.
Yeah.
I'd go into the bathroom. And number one, like, it was just like, I realized how much time I would waste, and just wasting and just filling my mind with stuff that has no bearing. It's not good stuff. And it was great. But I think it's those kind of things that you have to like constantly push yourself and prove to yourself that you can accomplish things that you don't think you can. And it's about the little wins. You have the making the bed thing that they talk about and all this other stuff. You have to have little wins.
Yeah.
And because those little wins are going to help snowball into even bigger things. And I think that's the biggest thing I try to do with my mental health. I'm not close to being there. I have not arrived. I'm still a mess some days, and that's okay. But I've established a network of people that I can call and be like, hey, I'm struggling today.
Well, I think one of the big you said something to me that I thought was so beautiful. You were talking to your daughter, and you just said, hey, I'm having a tough day.
Yeah.
And I heard that and I teared up. I was just like, that's so special that you can have a relationship with your child, that you can just be vulnerable and just say, hey, I'm just struggling today. And to have her step up for you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And be there.
Yeah. So for so long, Casey, I've masked that. Like, hey, people call you up and they're like, hey, how you doing? And your response is, oh, I'm good, man. I'm doing good. And I've learned to respond sometimes with like, oh, I'm just okay today. And I had a buddy text me that I haven't heard from in 6 months just the other day. And he's like, how you doing, man? And I said, man, I'm just doing okay. He's like, oh, what does that mean? Because I think it almost catches people off guard, right? Because we're so used to being fake.
I personally don't know, because there's a balance.
Yeah.
There's a balance. Like, I really believe that you can work yourself into a better mood. Like, I can get up, I can meditate, I can cold plunge, I can work, I can do things. I can serve somebody, I can send a message of gratitude. So it's this interesting dynamic for me on, not giving fear a voice, or not giving, just not allowing it. And so I think versus also being authentic and just being vulnerable. And so, I don't fully know.
Yeah.
I don't know the balance.
I haven't figured that out, but I can tell you that, when you talk about my daughter, and when I came over to the house one day, and she's like, hey, Dad, how you doing today? And for years and years and years, I'm like, man, I'm doing great. I'm doing fine. And inside I'm struggling. And I just looked at her and said, I'm not okay. And she pauses and like, she's almost caught off guard. But then she comes over and just hugs me.
Oh my gosh.
And just holds me. And you know what? It was weird, but also it was really nice.
Yeah.
And now I just try to give audience to the authenticity of it all. It gives audience for other people, because most people are struggling in some capacity. And I just want them to know that I'm not always on point.
Yeah.
I'm not always great.
No, it's so
and
great.
and it's okay if you're not too. And I'm somebody who's struggling today, or I'm just okay today. And if you want to talk, I'm here for you.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether that's the right thing either, because I agree with you.
No,
like we can get out
there's
of
a
it.
couple of points that I'm thinking of. One of them is this quote by, I think it's Henry B. Eyring, that I heard. It was probably a decade ago, that said, if you can look at people and every person that you see, assume that they're dealing with a major crisis. And if you have that light, you'll be much more empathetic with people. Assume that they just have something really heavy, really hard that they're dealing with. And then the second one, I was thinking about it, even with my daughter last night. She's so authentic. And I asked her, I said, hey, how are you doing? She said, I'm doing okay. I'm like, oh, what's going on? She said, oh, it was just a little bit tougher day. I just wasn't feeling that good, but I've had a good night tonight. And I'm like, she's just like being honest with me, and it allows me to like show up. And even for me last night, like we went golfing yesterday and I just wasn't there emotionally. My head was somewhere else. And I think we've been grinding pretty hard for a long time. And I think I'm just tired. And I called my wife and I just said, hey, you down to like go for a walk tonight? Like I need like my therapist. And like trying to like spell out that like, hey, I just need like you to listen.
Yeah.
And she shows up, just by me being able to be honest with her, instead of, our normal conversation, she was really deliberate to listen. And by the end of it, just me talking, I was just able to kind of just get some of this stuff out of my head. It wasn't even, there was no substance to it. It just needed to like go and get out. It allowed me to like level set, and kind of get back on good footing or whatever it is. But
your kids are always gonna, and your wife and all those people are always gonna think you're Superman. Like that's just, if you're an engaged father, an engaged husband, like they're always gonna think you're Superman. What allows you to connect to them is when you're vulnerable like that. They realize, you know what? Superman has a chink in their armor, and I can go be a part of solving that.
But
That's cool.
I think about that authenticity, and I think about the leaders that I really am drawn to.
Yeah.
And it's that authenticity. It's not the perfection. It's the imperfection coupled with the striving. Because I think there's one thing to like not be perfect, but there's another combo of like, I'm not perfect, but I'm doing my best. I'm aspiring to be better. I'm not comfortable just staying here. I'm working,
When you apply that to business though, like for me, it's like, I tell people all the time, I don't know how to not run great McDonald's restaurants. I don't know how to not run, like, because I see other owner operators in McDonald's, for example, that like their stores get paid for. They've got the number of restaurants that they want for the rest of their life, and they just kind of go into coast mode.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I don't know how to do that.
Yeah.
And I don't think we ever really arrive especially in business. And for me, if I ever got to the point where I feel like I've arrived and then I'm done, like, and I'm ready to just go into milk it mode or whatever, I'll sell and get out.
Yeah.
Like, because there's something about just going after that continuous improvement.
You got to go find that
and if we're doing the same job next year that we're doing today, we're failed.
Yeah.
It's about continuous improvement, even if it's just a little bit. And my team hears that from me all the time. Like, we got to just get a little bit better. We got to be one second faster in drive-through. But it's always about just that continuous improvement, and that applies to business. It applies to our personal life, and I think that's just like what I like to be about. And it keeps me motivated and keeps me moving.
Well, Brent, I've wanted to do this for a long time. I appreciate you coming out. I think just to summarize the things that I admire about you, one, I admire kind of your standards. You have these standards for excellence that you can just see permeate through your organization, through your family, through yourself. And I really admire that trait, coupled with a very kind heart. You just love people. And I think that is a very dynamic combo for a leader and an entrepreneur, to have extremely high standards with a really big loving heart. That's where, in my experience, the magic happens. And, as I watch you kind of from a distance and I see like the relics of success, my feeling is that they're a byproduct of really high standards coupled with just loving people. And I think that combo is just really beautiful, and kind of honor you for that. So thanks for coming in. Love spending time with you.
Man, thank you. And I got to tell you, Casey, like, it's been a short time we've known each other, but I consider you one of my dearest friends, someone I look up to a lot, and appreciate the impact you're having on me and on others as well. And look forward to many more hangouts and
thanks, brother.
many more rounds of golf.
Yep.